Yes, this is Triple M Footy's midweek rub. Looking forward to a big show this afternoon. I tell you what, there's plenty to talk about. This is going to be interesting. We've got the different version of a duck dive. We're going to focus in on what's happening at North Melbourne and the mess of that situation. As I welcome Daisy Thomas, Damien Barrett, Wayne Carey. Hello, boys. But there is a big issue off the top.
There is, Joey. And we need to get to it before we can actually talk as a group. And we enjoy our Wednesdays together, but there's fracturing of relationships and
it's getting
skirmishes.
serious too.
It always happens, and it's always good for us on Triple M when it involves one of our own.
There's a different vibe about the today in here.
There is, and I don't know where this is going to go, but we need to get to it. So Kane Cornes made a statement the other day about Paddy Dangerfield. Our man, the Duck, Wayne Carey, didn't like what Kane said. Now, Kane then returned fire this way on Footy Classified.
It just fascinates me that they come up with their own opinions off other people's opinion. If you have your own opinion, like if you want to come out and say Patrick Dangerfield's a bull, well, great.
Right, now, the way I read this, guys, Kane Cornes leads 2-1 here, and it's up to you, Duck, to either level the score or go back into the front.
No, well, that's the first time I've heard that, and he's right about opinions. I'm not as opinionated as what a Kane Cornes is, and I guess for me, when I listen to a Kane Cornes speak, and by the way, I love a lot of what Kane says. I agree with a lot of what he says, but for Kane makes so many opinions that it dilutes the good ones, and that's so for me, he has an opinion on everything. I'm not as opinionated, just like others aren't. And if you want to, like, I'll compare Kane to Lingy, for instance. So Lingy has a really strong opinion. Lingy's a 3 times premiership player. He's actually a premiership captain. But I think he's succinct. He doesn't make big opinions every week. He doesn't have to make the music. He doesn't have to make the opinion about everyone or anything and think that his opinion is right. The one thing about an opinion is, Joey, if it's yours, it's yours. If it's mine, it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. Now, Kane had his about Paddy Dangerfield, that he said that he needed to lose weight. And he uses references over in America about basketball. Well, let's compare apples with apples if you want to use Paddy Dangerfield. By the way, Paddy Dangerfield's injured. That's why he's not playing good footy.
Yeah, and we'll touch on that.
Not because he's overweight. So compare it. I was thinking about it and I thought, compare it to another great of our game in Tony Lockett. I remember when Tony Lockett tried to lose weight. Now, Tony Lockett was a bull, just like Paddy Dangerfield. He used his weight as a weapon, which Paddy Dangerfield uses his strength going through a contest, not around it like a sheepdog. If Paddy Dangerfield lost weight and lost power, like lost size and strength, he's not going through the contest like we know that he can, like a bull. Now, yes, we can all lose. He could lose weight.
I think Kane's still in front, Joey.
I
think Kane's still in front.
Skirt the issues. He 100% could skirt the issues. So for me, once again, getting back to Kane, using examples of like having an opinion on an opinion. Well, we just don't throw opinions around. We don't. So when I hear an opinion that is what I think factually wrong, we are in the industry that we're allowed to comment on it, are we not?
So effectively, if you don't agree with Kane, you're wrong. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, yes, correct. And the other part of it is Kane, for whatever reason, the clickbait version of Kane.
He's very good at what he does, Doug. I'm not trying to goad you now. He is outstanding at what he does.
Just hear me out. So the click version of what Kane says and puts out there, and whoever does it for him, I understand that I'm sure that he doesn't do it. But can we stop with the trickery? Because whenever I pick up something and I read legend, Port Adelaide player, legend. When I think of legend, I think of Ebert, I think of Williams. There's some, these massive names at that footy club.
He's pretty big, though.
What would you rather, ex-firefighter?
I think of Warren Treadray. I think of actual legends of that footy club.
Multiple best and fairest winner.
Honest tagger.
And you know why you win best and Kane was a very, very good player. He was a tagger. So please just say very good Port Adelaide player because he was a tagger and you get votes in BNFs when you're a tagger. Lingy was a tagger as well. But I've got to admit, when Lingy says something, for me, because there's not 1,000 of them, I sit up and listen and go, well, Lingy, premiership captain, makes sense. So I listen to Lingy.
Did he square it up, Damo? Did he get to the 2-all in the end?
I'm not sure. I think it's still Kane in front.
and for that, Damo, because you're up his ring.
Now it's 2-all.
Now it's 2-0.
Now we'll get to it. Now we'll get to it.
Because you work with Kane on the footy show. And the volcano. Now we could have a bit of fun.
Here we go.
No, but look, it's a bit of fun, and it's an opinionated. I thought he got it wrong. Paddy's injured. He thinks he's got it right. You know what?
That's the beauty of our game.
It's an opinion.
It's an opinion business. We can all have opinions, and that's the crux of it. Daisy, what'd you think?
I liked it. I like it, Duck. I like the fact of what you've said, and it's okay to have an opinion on somebody else's opinion. That's the industry.
And by the way,
if somebody says something and you disagree, you say it. That's how life works.
By the way, I think we can all agree here. Duck does have strong opinions. Let's be honest. I don't think someone that Duck builds his media career copying. So
Joey, the other part of it is too. You don't want to be someone that throws 1,000 darts and lands 3.
Yep.
Because let's be honest, how many times has he had to apologise this year? I mean, he dyed his hair blonde.
No, he got that one right. Ginnivan hasn't had that good of a year.
But he just
called the Saints no one.
So you can have a million opinions and only get 3 right, and then sit back and say, well, don't have an opinion on an opinion. So it's just anyway. It's whatever.
Anyway, we squared that one up. Hopefully that's the end of it. Hopefully, Kane, don't respond.
No, do respond, Kane.
Do respond. We need him to.
Let's move on from this one because we've got plenty more news we want to get into after this Damo. There's plenty happening. Of course, we're going to have a special edition of the Daisy Duck Dive looking at North Melbourne. And, of course, we'll preview the weekend's footy. That's all still to come on Triple M Footy's Midweek Rub. Midweek Rub. Damo, as always, plenty of footy news. Where would you like to start?
Might as well start with the Paddy Dangerfield issue, Joey, given we've just had a conversation with Duck about that. Your views on where he's at. Since the start of 2021, when he had the syndesmosis injury, he has not been the Paddy Dangerfield we've known to that point. He's now going to miss some time again. The club's effectively cotton-wooling him for a period of time with the calf injury. Your take on his age, stage and standing?
Well, I think part of, back to Dark's point about Kane, I think was referencing that he was proven right that he needs a conditioning block. But Damo, just reading between the lines, and I think I raised it a few weeks ago, it just seems quite cryptic around Dangerfield's injuries. He's injured, absolutely, Duck. But at the start of the year, Damo, it was a corked calf was our first report. And then he got a cork on top of the cork and it re-bled. Then he played through it, and then he missed a week or missed 2 weeks, and then he's come back and re-injured himself. Daisy, I don't know what you think, but with my experience and reading between lines, I think this is now just a player who's 32 years of age who keeps nicking his calf. He's got calf injuries that he's obviously now doing. They call it the old man's injury, and it feels like that's what's happening. And I probably get the sort of issue around it because I did a couple of calves when I was over 30 as well, and it is one of those strange ones where. And did you do any calves? Because you feel like you can run. You run at 80%. The Soleus. Because you can run it like 80%, can't you? You can actually still run and do a lot of things. You just can't go at 100%. You can't sprint because that's when
you know you can't.
And you know you can't because you feel it. And that's when you can re-nick your calf. So that feels like what it is with Paddy Dangerfield. A lot of this stuff about scar tissue and conditioning blocks and corkies. I just think that, unfortunately, age is still undefeated. No one is immune to sort of what happens when you get a bit older, and it feels like the Dangerfield with these calf issues is now maybe something that he's going to have to be very careful of for his career because we've seen players like Brett Delidio and Jared McVeigh and a lot of guys that once they start doing calves over 30, it can be something that lingers for the remainder of your career.
The problem with champions like Dangerfield is...
And he's so used to playing through injury.
Now, he is a champion of our game.
Yep.
The problem is danger at 70% is better than anyone else at 100%. So they play through pain.
Yep.
So they try to come back and then invariably, they don't do themselves a service and then everyone's commenting on about their weight and everything else.
Or their form, yeah.
So what I would say to Paddy, and clearly this is the decision that they've now made at Geelong, is let's get the bloke right. Let's not keep putting him through what he's going through, and then everyone's commenting about what's going on with him. Let's get him right, get him back out there, and I think we'll see the best of him after he gets himself right.
If it is the corked calf, though, which started it, we've all had corked calves, I assume, it does feel very similar to doing a calf. So then you play out, no, it's just a cork, you go and get your scans, but then the risk that you then have to do a calf later weeks, months on, which has happened again, is greatly higher because you're not actually sure of the sensation you're feeling. So with Paddy and the way he plays, he would have been going, it's just that corky again, or what is it? It's bled. So to your point, I think, give him 3-4 weeks off, get on top of this pretty quickly. I don't think we need to go ruling him out yet about saying he's going to have now a long history of calf issues. If it happens again once or twice, maybe then that discussion starts. Give the bloke a chance to get out there fully fit so we don't have to question how he's going and be somewhat honest with us. The point we were making the other week, Duck. Come out and tell us exactly what it is.
That's probably the
then
point,
we
isn't
don't
it?
have to guess and all this innuendo about, is it the corky, is it not? We can go, okay, well, if he's playing through a slightly torn calf, probably not the smartest man management, but good on the bloke for having a crack. Will lower his grade marking.
I think we all agree. Have it freshen up, get himself fully right, because he needs to be peaking at the end of the season for the Cats to win a flag.
Joey, you were big at the time when the umpire dissent rulings were becoming the vogue conversation. It went away for a period of time there, 3 or 4 weeks maybe, and it felt like it had been bedded down, that there was an acceptance and a tolerance from players and umpires. And then 2 weeks ago, it kicked up out again out of nowhere with varying interpretations and adjudications. And we got to the point where round 10 was, I think, as messy as some aspects that we've seen already this year. So your latest take on this, given you were probably the strongest
I think I was
at the time.
right, because you both, Damo and Duck, I remember clearly said, it's simple, just don't put your arms out. And I said it was impossible for a player to not react and not have an emotional response to a free kick. And that's been proven correct. Every player knows that they shouldn't do it, but it's instinctive. And then I thought we found a level of common sense where the umpire said, look, we understand that that's not dissent. They're not abusing us. They're not remonstrating the free kicks. We let it go. And then, as you said, it bobbed up again, which is the frustration for every footy fan. We don't know why. And what I want to ask you is, why haven't we heard from someone from the umpiring department or from Brad Scott to sort of help clarify all the confusion and the angst amongst media and fans? Why?
Well, because I think the answer is fairly obvious. I think he's put it back to the umpires, and it's up to their interpretation of it. So we've seen some umpires let it go, and we've seen some umpires say, no, I'm not putting up with it.
Yep.
That's the only way you can explain it.
I think Duck's right on that. Now, again, I haven't spoken about this aspect, Joey, of anyone at the AFL about it, but I think if someone was to be put up and to speak publicly in front of a microphone and a camera, I don't think they could have that conversation properly without being quite critical of some specific decisions. And I think that's the last thing they want to do right now. And I think that's fair enough too.
So if Brad Scott simplified it and just said this, look, guys, you run the risk. If you put your arms out, there are going to be umpires that pay it, and there are going to be umpires that won't pay it, because some will take offence, some won't. So you run the risk, and if it's a big moment or a big final or whatever, you put your arms out 1 week and you don't get paid, and the next week you do. That's the reason why.
I don't mind that.
I think the issue is that Brad Scott came out and was emphatic in the fact that it was black or white. In terms of, you do anything, you're getting it paid against you, but that has been proven not correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's the real issue, and you can't help but feel for the umpires. They pay a free kick, and if they don't see someone, or they have, a little bit of common sense, some of them don't, it either is or it isn't. So if anyone does that, 50, if it doesn't, and that's the only way to solve it, and I think that is a horrible way about going about it, because to your point, if you can't respond in the moment and then go, oops, sorry, no, I take it back. If you're going berserk, fair enough.
That's exactly right.
And Damo, my understanding is that the umpire department, a bit like West Coast Eagles, they've been decimated by illness and injury and everything else this year. So we've got some inexperienced umpires that are actually umpiring. So some of those younger umpires coming in, and if Brad Scott, your leader, is saying, you know what, pay it, and they're wanting to go further, they're probably going to pay it, where some of the more experienced umpires will go, well,
I'm not going to get dropped if I don't pay it.
Correct.
Yeah,
I went to umpire training last night as a part of another show I do, and the in-depth analysis they go through of all the weekend's games and decisions, they are trying their genuine backsides off to get some real clarity and make sure they get every decision right, which is, I guess, not overly surprising, but to see how hard it is at the time and to adjudicate it, and with all the different rules that are going on and the changes that have come in through our game, it's hard not to feel sorry for them after going along, going, geez, is that one, is it not? And then, they have opinions on it which vary within the group. It's a tough one, and the job is not made any easier by the way the AFL are helping them out.
Yep. Joey, I'm seemingly directing a lot of this news segment through you and your lens today, and I will need to, again, on this one, with Sam Fisher currently facing very serious criminal charges relating to drugs. For those wanting to get the full story on that, go to the Triple M social media platforms to get all the details, because I'd rather talk about this topic of a player, and a very good player in Sam Fisher's case, an excellent player, two-time best and fairest winner in a good team. Life after football, let's now talk generically, life after football for players.
Yeah.
What onus of responsibility is on A, the club, and B, the AFL Players Association? Because Nick Riewoldt really strong on this aspect of it when it came to Sam Fisher.
Yeah.
You saw it as well. Maybe just talk easier, generically, as opposed to specifically on Sam.
Yeah, I think Nick has copped a bit of backlash, and it was maybe a little bit misinterpreted because it wasn't specifically about Sam Fisher. It was just using what his situation as a trigger to talk more broadly about transition out of AFL and just the difficulties and how much of a challenge it is, Daisy, for players. We've all been through it. It is challenging for a lot of players, and it's more a fact of who's sort of responsible for a player's transition into the the real world or the post football. Who's sort of in the one that can help the player and be the sort of point of contact? Because at the moment, you've got clubs that are terrific while you're playing, and they do still keep in touch, and they can help you where they can. The AFL have got their services. You've got player managers that some still stay in touch when you retire, some pretty quickly drop you. And then you've got the AFLPA, who also have an element of staying in touch, but also, they've got other things that they worry about with the current group. So I think Nick's point was more about we need to find one sort of central point where players that are struggling after football have a point of contact, a reference point, someone that can check in on them more often and keep tabs rather than slipping through the cracks of everybody sort of trying to help but nobody really owning, whether it's a player suffering with drugs or mental health or concussion or employment or just struggling to fit into life after football. It's more finding there's an element where players is really difficult for a lot of them. And I don't know if the transition system is good enough yet to help players that are the ones that are suffering after.
You used a good employment. I think that's the biggest concern. And not the biggest concern, but one of the main concerns. So whether the player, and I think it's the Players Association, by the way, I think they're the ones that. But whether it's, a couple of years, and you're not to know this because, let's be honest, only 4.5% of players played 200 games.
Yep.
So it's not a massive percentage. So, I think the average is 3.5 years, Damo, or 4 years.
Yeah, about 4. That's somewhere in that zone
that's
anyway.
the average.
Yep.
So it's a difficult time to know when a player will. But when you're actually in that bubble, you guys understand this, and when you're in that bubble and, people say, oh, well, you should be doing courses or preparing for, from your first game, preparing for when you get out. Unfortunately, when you're in that bubble and you're trying to play AFL football, it's all consuming. Your whole focus is trying to be an AFL footballer. And I can guarantee you this, as good as clubs are, if your form slightly drops off and you're at Melbourne Uni doing a couple of courses, I guarantee you the one thing that's going to drop off, it's going to be the course. And you're going to come back to the club and you'll be doing extra sessions to make sure that you continue to play senior footy and keep your career. So for me, Joey, it's the Players Association, whether it's a couple of years prior to, whether you're on the fringe or not. So if you are on the fringe, then and Players Association know who's on the fringe and who's the 200 game player. We all know, we can sit here, we could go through every list now and say fringe, 200 game player, 200 game. So it's whether the Players Association just makes contact with that particular player and saying, are you planning for retirement? And if you are, what job are you looking at doing and can we help? So just that little arm at the right time to be handed out and then maybe your focus starts to change a little bit. But while you're in the bubble, all you're worried about is playing footy.
The bubble's so hard though because you almost live your life backwards. Most people earn most of their money or their bigger cash as they get older and wiser in life.
In 32, 33 onwards.
You're correct. And then you get to sort of 45, you've got a successful business, 50, and then you sort of plan a decent chunk of going to retirement. And then once you get to that point, you've got your super. The AFL's got its annuity scheme, which, let's be honest, isn't, millions and billions of dollars per player each year. So to be concentrating on what you're going to do, but whilst doing a job that's bloody hard to do and to keep, that being playing AFL footy, rock up week in, week out, then have moments spare where you're then meant to go out and by the time you leave the game, be trying to earn comparatively what you were, which is
a lifestyle that you're used to, and it gets
which is hard. So and we're not sitting here saying poor players, poor us, but it's just the reality of it is that
you've got to take responsibility for yourself.
Well,
that's I know you're not saying that, but that needs to be part of this conversation.
Absolutely.
When the comments come out, oh, they're grown men and all. Well, you're not a grown man at 18. When you come into the club and you start earning good money. You don't know how to spend or use that money up until, and that's why the system, if everyone wants to compare us to America, that's why the system over there, I mean, they go through college, they're not in the system until they're in their 20s.
Are you too look, last issue on this, are you too institutionalised as a footballer within the system? I think you are.
You are.
I'm asking the question for that reason. Yeah,
you are.
And that's the system's problem as much as it is the individuals when they exit it, because The ownership of players, I mean, we'll talk about North Melbourne in a few moments' time, but the ownership of players with the Jason Horne-Francis, can he use the 4 days he's got off to travel? In my eyes, of course he can. He doesn't need to tell the club what he's doing, but according to some people, you should.
Yeah, it is a challenge. And I get that for most people listening to this, it's hard to comprehend because they haven't been in an AFL system for a long time, but it is a challenge. And I just think we can help to transition with players better and maybe avoid some situations that not just Sam, but other people have found themselves in different circumstances. But, tragic situation and not ideal for anybody. Hey, that might do us, Damo, because we do want to get into the North Melbourne situation, what's going on there. That will be our version of the Daisy Duck Dive. That's coming up next on Triple M's Footy's Midweek Rub. Damo, we have the greatest shin boner of all time with us. There's plenty happening at North Melbourne. I'll let you start and you can fire a few questions Duck's way to find out what is happening at the club.
Yeah, Duck, you have been worried about this club now we'll start with you though, for a long time and you've been vocal about it and you've been, I think, very much on the money the whole way through. How worried are you right now following the exits of 3 recruiters in the past 24 hours?
Yeah, pretty worried. When I say worried, I'm arm's length. So let's not forget that. But I had a couple of conversations with some old teammates this morning about it all, and they're probably more invested than what I am. But what I'm worried about, Damo, is what I'm hearing out of the footy club, and this is what is the real worrying part for me, is that, like all of us, when you make some mistakes, you're in a bad way. It's when you finally take ownership and understand that there's an issue that you can actually get better.
Yep.
I think North Melbourne Footy Club, I think that they think everything's going okay. For whatever reason, I don't think they're being completely honest with themselves. I don't think, like I said, you can't improve until you actually acknowledge that that we're broken.
Yep.
And I don't think they've acknowledged that. And I'm talking about off ground. We know they're broken on ground, but I think off ground, and that there's clearly stuff going on off ground for what's happened over the last 24 hours and what's happened for a fair period of time now. So for me, taking ownership and coming out and saying, yes, we've got A, B, C and D wrong and we're going to fix it, then you just don't get better until you admit that.
Part of the Daisy Duck Dive, you jump in here, Daze. When you see that North Melbourne list, how many players do you look at and think they're really good players and would get regular games at other clubs? And I don't want that to be a question without notice.
No, there's still a chunk of very good players there. It's just how quickly they fall away. We all know that it's probably your bottom 6 to 10 that make you a decent football club. And at the minute, those players aren't if you compare it to other lists, they're probably not playing senior football that often. Just to Duck's point. So if you do realise it and, we go, okay, this is where we're at, we're not going anywhere near as good, we've hit rock bottom, what's the solution from there? Do they need a complete clean out? Do they need someone to come in with the big ideas?
You can't do, well, the simple answer to that is you can't even get to that point until you admit you've got a problem. You've actually got to take ownership and say, well, you know what, we've got some real issues here. Now, they came out.
You don't think they know that?
There was the messaging I'm getting, once again, I'm arm's length, but a couple of teammates are not.
Yep.
And their messaging is, no, well, we're financially good off the ground and we've got this going on. And I've met Sonia, by the way, she's great and I thought she was fantastic. I know she caught up with you as well, Damo, and I know Benamafio and I know, other people in charge at that footy club, but I'm just not sure that they understand what is actually going on properly because...
Well, the trend is not going up.
It is. There is too much going on. You don't have people just resigning for no reason. And there's more to this, and there's noise around the coach and the players, and now the number 1 draft pick is getting in trouble for going to Adelaide. It is broken. Admit that you're broken, and that's when you can start to mend.
And there's AFL concern now at its highest levels, with big meetings coming up over the introduction of a 19th licence. And right now, you don't want to be a vulnerable club in those conversations for a number of reasons. And we could take this conversation down those tangents at some stage, and they will be taken down that path at some stage. But you go back to 2019 when Ben Buckley was still running the footy club and Glenn Archer was on the board, and they made the decision to sack Brad Scott, effectively. It's effectively sacking. Only 18 months after they recontracted him for 3 years. They then couldn't get one of the three coaches they wanted, Longmire, Clarkson, Simpson, gave it to Reece Shaw, who barely lasted 1 year in charge. And now we're 18 months into David Noble's record. And his record, whether you like it or not, is now comparable with Mark Neal's at Melbourne. 5 wins after 32 games only at this stage.
There's key decisions through that time that have come back to bite.
Yeah, and those two men, Ben Buckley and Glenn Archer, have left the club since making some of those decisions, not seeing the project out. So, yeah, it's as messy, this club, as we've seen for a number of years.
Can I play devil's advocate, though? Because coming in, I was thinking about it and go, in the last 10 years, St Kilda have been in the same boat. They won 12 games in 3 years, sacked their coach, sacked their list manager. You know, Pelkin was going to come in and they was going to fix There's been Carlton in the same boat. Melbourne have been in the same boat. Adelaide Crows have had a tough run. Now, is it not just Brisbane Lions? Is it not just the evolution? There is always going to be a team that's going to be at the bottom that's going to have 3-4 years where they struggle to win games, but eventually every club get their way out of it.
Is there a plan out, though, is I think the question.
I think with all of the clubs that you spoke about then, well, in particular Melbourne, because let's use them as the example because of what they've done in the last year or so, is that they made massive decisions. They admitted where they were at, and by the way,
they got a while though,
and they got help. Yeah, it did. But so once again, let's not waste. North Melbourne can't afford to waste any more time. Right now, this is as low as this football club has ever been since I've known it. I don't know. It might have been lower in the 40s or 50s.
But it's pre-Barassi bad. Like it's late 60s, early 1970s. Historically, as bad as it is right now. So, and that takes some doing, given what Barassi took over back then.
So everyone seems to be hanging their hat, Joey. Yes, so we've got a young list, and you know we've turned over this amount of players, and we've got people in key leadership positions that are brand new, and all of that sort of stuff. But you know, at the end of the day,
is that not just fair?
No, that's fair. But and they're hanging the hat on. And we're debt free. That seems to be the only thing that North right now can hang their hat on, that they're debt free. I mean, you know, there's more problems at that footy club than being just out of debt.
And Damo, what's the latest with Jason Horne-Francis? I want to get the boys' opinion on this because you were quite strong before. Your opinion at Horne-Francis about being cautioned for flying home on a weekend off.
And look, they've clarified that to a point. That they didn't like the fact he didn't tell them, and I get that aspect of it. But again, there's going to be truth in the middle of the whole thing somewhere. Did they want him to go after coming back from Perth? I mean, I didn't have an issue with it at all. Now, I'm coming at it from an outside a club system perspective, but yeah, it's not a good sign with him either. I mean, he's now 10 matches into his first season, doesn't want to talk about the future beyond the end of next year. And if I'm him, I wouldn't be either. I mean, why would you want to stay there right now? I mean, North Melbourne needs to present a compelling reason for him to contemplate staying, and right now they're not.
I think the key to this story is that he didn't have the confidence to go to a leader, whether it be the coach or someone else at that footy club, and say, listen,
that's the concern.
I want to just go home. I'm a bit homesick, or I want to see or whatever it might have been.
Yeah.
But he didn't have the confidence to ask to do that.
He knew he should have. That's the right thing
Because I reckon if he had the confidence in someone at that footy club, he would have asked.
Yeah.
I think
or he was worried about the answer he was going to get. He knew that if he had asked, he would have been told no.
Which is a concern as well.
The really good footy clubs you wouldn't have to ask. They would come to you and say, hey, it's Mother's Day. You're not, you're from Adelaide. Would you like to go home? There's your option in front of you. So you don't, as an 18-year-old, feel like, geez, I've got to go up and I'm going to burden them with wanting to go see my family, which, again, he probably would have got the answer. But the fact that there was doubt that he didn't, I think that's the real issue. And I think back to my time, I was only an hour up the road, but Mick Malthouse, any time, he would sense, you all right? Do you want to go back home? Do you want to see your mates? Do you want to go see your family? Do you, whether it's take tomorrow off training, the ability to be a man manager rather than just a coach.
The other thing is, I didn't realise in your own time you couldn't do what you wanted to do, whether it be get on a plane or a train or whatever you wanted to get on.
I'm with that. With you on that, Duck. I don't know why you need to tell them.
What pay after a Friday night game, I'd get on a plane on a Saturday.
Different times.
But Monday morning.
Let me finish Sydney. Now the club knew, okay, well, we can't stop him getting on a plane and going to Sydney. It's his own free time. So what they did is they just bought training forward to shorten the amount of time I could go.
Well, we can talk about this all day. We've got to keep moving. We'll get to a break because up next we'll have a look at all the round 11 action and have a look back at some of our tips from last week. Triple M Footy's Midweek Rub. Triple M Footy's Midweek Rub. We're going to take a look at round 11 because there are some awesome games that we're going to assess, some big ones. But before we do that, we like to look back at last week. I mean, we're not going to bother.
We like to look back.
We're not going to bother with the certainties. Damo, you tipped Geelong to beat Port Adelaide. You know, that was pretty obvious. Daisy, you went out on a limb and you tipped the Giants to beat the West Coast Eagles. So well done to you, Daisy. But you know what? I'm going to give credit. Last week we gave Duck a bit of stick for his tips, but he bounced back this week.
Carlton, my certainties.
Oh, Carlton, your certainty.
I love this.
I like that.
Certainties.
Record that audio, Jill. There you go. Good call, Duck. You're very, very strong on that one.
Yep. No,
Wasn't
it
as
was
good
good
as wasn't as good as my tip though.
Oh,
They're a chance the Hawks. I don't know why I keep having faith in Hawthorn, but in Tassie against Brisbane, they might challenge Brisbane. That's a bit of my smoky.
Ooh,
They're
very
a
good.
chance and they
Smoky up.
might.
Yeah.
It's very
Still pretty
fluffy.
good. No, pretty good.
Let's not play your audio of Essendon because you did say I will tip Essendon to beat who
And
they played.
they
Richmond.
came out and they did a
they were
very
good for
poor
about
job.
5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, let's have a look at this week. We won't necessarily do our certainties and smokies because I just want to touch on the 4 big games. Starting with Friday night, Duck, Sydney v Richmond. Yep. This is a beauty at the SCG. It is literally 2 teams that I think they're separated by about 1% on the ladder. So it is as close to an even matchup as you'll get.
Yeah, Richmond, my certainty.
Richmond?
Yep. Yeah, I think Richmond are going a lot. And I know they haven't got, I know Lynch is out and also Lambert. So 2 big outs, but I think the way they're playing, their pressure game is getting back to somewhere near their best. And they've got some match winners, and I know Sydney have as well. But like I said, Sydney beating Essendon a couple of weeks ago, I don't think they'll get that corridor like they got against them up there. So I think Richmond.
Damo, do you think the Swans will just be keeping a bit of an eye on how Dustin performs on Friday night at the SCG, just to see how he fits in at the SCG?
They will be anyway, and yes, they will be, specifically for what could happen next year. I'm actually going to go against Duck on this one, and I'm prepared to say my certainty of the round is the Swans. As much as I like what Richmond's doing, but I'm just thinking it's almost a near final chance for the Swans to beat a good team. They haven't done that yet of significance. They've had a good season, but only a good one, and I think this will be a chance.
Yeah, they've had a bad past month. Only the one win in that stage was against Essendon too. Obviously, the Tigs 4 from 4 in that time. I'm going to go with the Swans as well, Damo. I think they have to get their season back on track. Not that it's completely derailed, but they sort of need to start getting it going in a manner that is trending upwards.
Yeah, I'm not sure with both these teams whether they're capable of being a top 4 or a real premiership threat. So I think we'll find out which team's better. I think this will decide.
Who are you tipping?
I will probably tip Richmond, but with no real confidence. I think both teams on their day are very good, but also I think both have still got some sort of parts of their game that they continue to need to work on. So it'll be a beauty, and we'll find out who is the better side. What about Melbourne, Freo? We know Freo have lost 2 on the trot in the wet, which they do really struggle. Can anyone see them pushing Melbourne at all with their defensive game, giving themselves
Can they score, though? I think we both know both teams really sound defensively, but Fremantle's avenues to goal are dead set Sahara Desert sort of setup. They have dried up that quickly.
6 goals last week, 4 the week before.
Yeah,
and
again,
Yeah, they were. No doubt they were. But
the opposition
they're not going to get through
finding ways
Melbourne, are they?
I don't think there's any chance.
Yeah. Melbourne for me.
Yeah, I think they're desperately needing Fife back in that side now to play in the forward half and see if he can fix up some of their issues. What about the game up in Darwin, the Gold Coast Suns v the Hawks? Because the winner will be just knocking on the door of a top 8 spot. They will, give themselves a bit of a chance. Conditions you'd think would favour Gold Coast, that slippery, humid conditions that they're used to. But Hawthorn, they couldn't be more impressed with their game last week.
Yeah, I agree. But because of the conditions, I'm going to go with the Suns.
The Hawks don't mind it wet and dirty, though. They beat the Cats on Easter Monday in sort of slippery, crappy conditions. Obviously, it'll be a bit hotter.
Humidity.
Yeah, but it's like wet weather. I will be tipping the Suns also, though, Duck.
Yeah, I think the Suns as well. I think maybe the Hawks a bit up and down this year. Big win last week. Got to travel from... I don't know how they're going to go. Duck travelling from Tassie, the cold Tassie, up to Darwin.
Any polar bears
and zebras. And
no theories with going from Tassie to Darwin, is there?
We do. I know you think that's silly.
No, I tipped Hawthorn off. I didn't tip Hawthorn, but I thought they were my smoky off the back.
It's just an opinion. You don't have to agree with it.
That's right. And what about the last game, the old traditional roles? I can't think of the last. I mean, you've played in so many of nearly all of them, Daisy. Collingwood, Carlton, when was the last time... Well, what year can you think of that would come into a game with this much hype around both teams in good form? When was the last time both
2013, Malthouse's first year as coach and Collingwood coming off a grand final 11, prelim in 12. There was a good crowd at the MCG for one of those games.
Juddy was flying.
Did the Blues win that one? Did they
I
give us a
can't remember now. I've raised it after all that. Yeah.
It's going to be huge, and I hope there's a massive crowd as well because the Blues really couldn't be going much better, and the Pies also, they've been fantastic. It's going to be an absolute cracker. I think Carlton, just on form alone, will be winning, but not by a great margin.
Yeah,
I hope it lives up to the hype. I really
think
do.
Carlton are my certainty. I think that they are just chock full of confidence. I think they'll be too big in the midfield and then trying to stop Charlie Curnow. Damo, you were onto it early about the Charlie Curnow resurgence. It has been the biggest story of the year.
It is unbelievable.
He right now is, you could almost argue, the number one key forward in the game.
You know, even argue the number one player in the game. If you want to go, if you want to really stretch the goalless in round one, and then to kick 33 goals in the 8 games or 9 games after that, I cannot talk more highly of what he's done.
It's bloody good for football,
and it's
Damo.
so
He's got a
exciting for footy.
strut about him. He's got an aura.
Yeah.
He's got something about him that is pretty
We've got,
impressive.
you know what we've got at the moment? We've got a number of players. Max King's obviously in that argument as well. We've got a number of players that can grab a game by the scruff of the neck and win in big moments. Charlie, a couple of weeks ago, didn't have a kick. He got beaten, but kicked 2 goals at the start of the last quarter.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm loving it. Norton, obviously, really good at the start of the game. We've got some exciting big guys. It's good.
Is Wayne Carey like in his ability and desire and his want to seize the moment, I reckon?
And then he
fair
struck
duck?
post-goal.
Has he got a?
He's got a bit of duck about him.
He's a bit better looking, though. But, hey, this has been very good.
well, when he's 70, he should be.
I was going to say Duck actually looks younger than him.
Very good.
That's because
Is that sponsored product on your house?
got-
not
the mosh
sponsored.
hat?
Not
Oh,
sponsored.
just the mosh
I'm
hat
an
on?
investor.
Yeah. Is it ironic that he's got the mosh hat on to sort of?
To cover up what mosh is being used for.
Hey, very
Actually,
good
that's
show.
right. I shouldn't be wearing a hat anymore.
You
should I?
don't need the hat anymore. Be careful.
A visor.
You might rub it off. Hey, this has been a very, very good show. Triple M Footy's Midweek Rub, of course. Remember, you can listen exclusive on the Listener app, and don't forget, you can listen to every game across round 11 this weekend, including Friday night, the huddle with Darce Chief Howie, Nath Brown, Damo ahead of the big one, Sydney v Richmond. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll do it all again next Wednesday.